Hi, everybody. Instructor Phil here. I'm going to be working on a demo, going over some basics on this wonderful weekend for President's Day. And this demo is going to be about how to start thumbnailing and structuring part of your castle within multiple foregrounds and elevations. And so we'll begin. I meant to get this up earlier on Friday and Saturday, and I've just been swamped with a bunch of things. So here I am on Sunday working away, and I was a little bummed I didn't get to go out riding today because I have a part missing on my bike. My chain wheel that supports the chain tension came off somewhere, so not good. So anyway, here I am working on this. I'm going to try to do a two-part. Part one here is going to be about thumbnails and getting the idea on the paper, and then after that we'll move into doing a more developed rough or sketch. Okay. All right, so obviously one of the things we're always going to do, we're always going to start off with just a simple frame. And I have a couple different ideas already in my brain, and I've been looking at a little bit of the reference, not too much of it, but I did take a peek at it. I got to admit, I've always had a little bit of fondness for castles and thinking about them and how I might sketch something. So with some of that in front of me, it makes it a little bit easier. Again, as always, try to make yourself a little bit more familiar with your subject matter that you might be working on. So that is looking at the reference, really taking in the reference. And don't be that one art student who always goes like, oh yeah, I saw the reference, and you saw it on your phone, which is this big, and you never really got to really see the reference. I mean, large, looking at it, looking at the details of arches or supports or the way the rocks hold a castle down to a foundation. All those are really, really important aspects. Okay, so there's a couple things that we have to have on this. One of the things that we have to have is elevated planes. So if it's easier for you, there's nothing wrong with starting like this with a thumbnail, just with like a base grid. So it gives you an idea of how things might be elevated. So starting like this, it allows me to get in here and then immediately think about elevating up planes. So for example, if I come over here, I'm going to try to get that S that we talked about, which is in compositional influence, Edgar Payne. So one of my ideas was if I have something come along here, come along there, maybe jut out into this way, something like that. And then there might be a hill sort of next to this, maybe hill next to this, maybe another larger hill in the foreground here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and throw in a couple ideas of how my castle could be. Now, I'm going to retain this in 2-point. So obviously I'm going to have a vanishing point way to the left-hand side, another one way to the right. So one big no-no in this is never have your vanishing points right here next to the frame. We've talked about that before in my perspective class extensively. The reason why we never do that is you can never reframe your composition. Number two, those are fine art instructors who never really drew in their life professionally, or they just read some book on draftsmanship. And if you do put your vanishing points here and here, you're more likely to have a line that goes right down the middle of your composition. So that is a big no-no. So let's not do that. Okay. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm just going to really rough sketch out an idea. So now I have a castle that's going to be on an elevated plane. Okay. There's a hill or mountain here in the back. And what I was thinking of is maybe it could be cool if there was another hill or mountain that connects back here. And then this part of the S curve has another hill or mountain that might come into there, if you can see that. So I like this idea of, when I was just sketching this, having this mountain here could be a really cool access point in my sketch here, for having some type of an archway built in the back, maybe back here into part of that structure. And again, this is a thumbnail, so we don't have to be 100% on everything. I mean, there could be a couple of things slightly off or that need to be fixed. What I do need to do is define where I want a vanishing point. And I'm thinking of, I might have a point in my frame and then another one off to the far side of the composition. So maybe, remember, we can do that in perspective. Have one VP inside, another one way out. That could totally work. Okay. So let me come over here and start. When I've done research before looking at castles have a lot of protective walls that go around them. and they raise at different levels. I think that's really, really important to sort of note and to get in to part of your initial sketch. Also, one thing I've noticed before on castles and structures is they do tend to have one main focal point or read or like designation sort of in the front somewhere of the castle. What I mean by that could be a row of columns, could be like double-edged, like a large front door or gate that drops, and there's edging details with side columns or some large other element. So, you know, when you're sketching this, you can think about maybe pronouncing, like if I put a little cornice tops on this, that might become a little bit more pronounced, let's say, in part of my sketch. I'm going to bring that wall back a little bit more, back into here. Maybe there's going to be a secondary wall sort of coming up here. And again, it is a thumbnail. So, you know, I'm always wanting to keep my stuff loose, and I can always fix and adjust perspective a little bit later. If there's another direction that I want to go in, that's acceptable, right? Sort of like this, maybe angling here, like, and then I'm thinking I need to have another structure pop in the back here like this. Maybe that wall needs to, it's going to turn in perspective, go this way. So maybe that's part of my main structure. Maybe there's a roof, sort of like at a Catholic church, they have those roofs. And then what I'll do is I'll come back here and I'll go up again with another structure. And then I have this other wall, just very lightly sort of in here, going back this way. And then somewhere back here, I might need to have another cornice protective element inside. All right, and then let's figure this out. So I have different parts of my structure here, turning at sort of different angles. Again, I could solidify the structure a little bit later if I like in my sketch. This is just me getting it down, meaning that when I go to more of a rough stage, I can get in there and really figure out what I was wanting to do. So one of the main interests for me right now, is going to be, am I establishing some form of a visual read in a silhouette shape to the back of my castle? That's without a doubt really, really imperative right now. It has to be that read. Again, those really large, love those walls. That's not really the best place for that wall. Maybe I should end it back this way a little bit. This very large protective wall, prevent people from going up. So that's pretty cool. I like that sort of castle sketch there. Now what I'm going to do is, if I have that there, I was imagining something here, like an entryway or gate to maybe the city, and it's behind on part of that mountain. There might be other little rocks or the little elements in the back there. Okay. All right. So I have elevated planes. I have the castle up on an elevated plane. And then I was getting towards the front here. I did include a little bit of that famous Edgar Payne, nice windy S in there. So to see how I want to develop that a little bit more. And maybe the road starts to come, but maybe it's going to finish. Maybe I'm going to add another elevated plane here. Maybe the road will be here and this gets cut off a little bit. So that's a really cool thing you could do, is you could elevate something higher on a plane, and that road could have turned like this, and there's another plane here, and then the road's coming like this on top of the elevated plane. If you can see that, your eye will still follow this. Your eye will follow, your eye will follow that turn into there, and then bring it back down into here and bring it back into there. So that creates like a little nice zigzag point to what's happening there. And then, I don't ask me why, but I have this idea of like a large column in the front. something made out of stone that might be like starting to fall a little bit. So, and then I was thinking if I had that in here, maybe that could also have part of my organics around it. So I like this idea of something here that's very large in the foreground, and maybe it ties in something here with like another structure, and then maybe it's part fallen here. So let me go ahead and sketch that. So this will be some type of large stone mass in the foreground. And then what I'll do is I'll come back on that minute and start putting some organics that follow me back into, remember that was part of our assignments, having the organics tie into this piece, because we usually don't see a lot of work that has that type of stuff. And then what's cool, see, look at, here's a great thing about curves. You see how that curve can come this way a little bit? I could now just lightly reframe my composition just a little bit more. And I could see that nice windy road coming into my piece there. So I might lightly adjust that just a teeny bit. And I want to have, I want something right here that's really large. It pushes me back into the castle. So I'm going to come up here and throw a nice large, what I call a pointy rock. It's a nice large mounded rock with a couple others next to it. In the foreground. So that's going to help point my eye back into the front there. Okay, and then I have this, here we have this big giant old wall. Okay, and part of my idea was now I'm going to start, get ready to introduce some of the organics here. So maybe is this road, so now I'm looking at the rocks here. Let me fix that. I like the rocks. I don't know, second guess. I do that all the time. Now I'm thinking they might be better maybe over here a little bit, so I can see the road coming towards me. So I'm going to place them here and then go back with my trusty eraser. I love this eraser. Oops. Oh man, Phil did a no-no. I'm drawing, I somewhere accidentally merged my layer. I had a separate drawing layer and I merged it all into one. So no big deal. It's only a thumbnail. So what I have to do means that I have to switch to white and basically paint in white back over what I had, because my knucklehead mistake there, I wasn't paying attention, which is something that I do when I'm talking quite a bit during a demo. So now let me fix this a little bit, because I had my windy road. It's going to come up here in the foreground like this. Line back up here and get this drawn right. Show that ground in there if you can. Hold on, I need to really separate this foreground to that midground. And I had it in there in my sketch, and I sort of erased some of it. So now I need to make sure it really gets in there nicely. Right there, I can see that road winding, and they're going to come back here. When that comes back this way, my idea was to come in here and put another column. but then I'm going to have it broken, pointing up this way. So this was part of my idea. The road's going to curve into here. There'll be some rocks around, broken down, and there'll be maybe an older column like about here, tilting in, but it's going to be broke. So I'll have the part of the base of it here. It's going to curve in and basically look like this. Now I'm going to widen like that there. I'm going to widen because remember I wanted to have another column in the back here. Maybe this is me being a kid going back to drama in Greece with my dad and visiting all the old ruins in the north in the city of Philippi. It's pretty cool. They have lots of old stuff like this. It's all falling apart, you know, and degraded, and the stone and the marbles, you know, sort of coming apart. There we go. All right. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in and start introducing these organics. Maybe this is an old city that's fallen. What's cool is now I have angled planes, which I wanted. I have things elevated on some different elevations, which is going to be naturally way more interesting to the viewer. So now I'm going to come in here and start throwing in some nice little organic touches. Make sure when you're doing your organics to follow the sense of shape and form that they exist in, even as a rough, just to make the drawing look better and to have it sort of make sense. If you want to take that off, meaning that like if you have something that goes like this from here to here, if you're doing this, you're doing it wrong. That circumference is going away from you. So you need to be wrapping that with lines like this to make it look real. Yeah, and that's really, really pivotal, I think, to getting something to start to look right a little bit. And a lot of people don't want to do that. That right there, it's like that's like basic drawing 101. And if you struggle with like these little basic drawing techniques, then you really need to get in, start cutting shape, messing with drawing things at multiple angles and compositions. That will really help guide you quite a bit, getting better at that. Take some time and practice, but it is important. Speaking of that, if you're, I might put this up on my YouTube site. This is a demo for one of my classes that I'm doing over the weekend. Um, if I do put this up, if you're a new student, if you didn't know this, I'll just mention it in the demo. All my classes I'm teaching in Fullerton College, I now have the right to teach them, even though I'm in person on campus and it'll say in person, I can still teach them online as an online component, what we call like a multi sort of hybrid. So I'm doing the class at school, but you could still be in another country or another state. The only problem is they charge you a little bit more money because you're out of state, out of country. I have no control over that. If you're in California, that's a win-win scenario because then many of the classes are a very limited amount in terms of funds. They're only $150. I know, which sounds crazy. Especially, I've taught at other art schools. Taught at Laguna College of Art and Design for a while, and taught and wrote most of the curriculum for the CGMA, Computer Graphics Master Academy. And it's mind-numbing. I feel bad for students sometimes because they really do. Some schools are ran more like a business model, and I get it. People have to stay in business, but my opinion, I think art education shouldn't always have to be super duper expensive. That's one of the things I really like about Fullerton is we're ran by the state of California. We're not in it for the money per se. We're in it to make students better artists. And that's our main concern. There's no, like other companies, they have a quota or like the old associates in art schools back in the day. I had a couple of friends that taught there that worked in the industry with me, and they'd always laugh like how they couldn't fail students. You couldn't fail a student because it was it would affect the role of the class. You know what I mean? And they couldn't get enough students. So I had friends that would teach there, and they'd fail somebody, and then they'd be told by administration that you're not allowed to fail students. Which then gets me like, well, then how do you learn, right? If you're a student, how are you going to really learn and get better at your craft if you're going to be lazy? And sometimes the way artists work is you need to get your ass kicked a little bit, and then that builds a little bit more confidence in you. And that's an important thing to really do, to get artists to really understand the importance of, because you have some people that want to do the class and they don't do the homework and they don't want to take it seriously. So you need to find that happy medium, as a student and as an instructor to really get the right class that's best for you. And that's, what I really like about our program is it getting to work with Mike, Frank, two other really talented artists who have industry experience, and they get to bring all that industry experience back into the classroom, share with everybody else. To me, that's a really, really great experience to have. Got something cool. Oops. Let me redo that. I wish it was cheaper, but it's not yet. It should be cheaper, especially for students out of state. I mean, but that non-state tuition kills you. You know what I mean? What I'm going to do is I like this idea, maybe a large brick or structure here, but I got to get the right perspective, maybe pointing towards the castle again, like there's an overhang from this support here somehow. Right. That's a pretty good thumbnail. I like the direction that it's going. And I haven't done any organics on this side yet, and I need to do some more organics back here. So what I might do is bring this line up a little bit more so that hits, and try to incorporate maybe a tree or something in the back in there. So what you saw me do, which I think was pivotal, was build part of the set and the location first, get the castle in there. I mean, that castle is really important because it is what I would call like a focal point of that narrative. So in this course where we're focusing just on organics, we have now changed the composition of just doing a world in organics by introducing a narrative. The narrative is the castle. There has to be scale on the castle. It has to work correctly. It has to make sense. You have to get drawn to the castle. The structure of the castle has to also sort of take place and be correct. So there's lots of other factors there. So what I was wondering if I could come back here, maybe put some type of I don't know if this will work. Maybe there's a tree or a pine tree. I don't know. Probably shouldn't do that right now, but I'm going to do it anyway. I need to focus on some of this side over here, especially if I have this pathway, this road coming towards me up here in the foreground, and I need to really get that in there. So I'm going to go to erase like 10%. I need to dull down some of these lines that got a little bit darker in there. So I have these straight hill lines back here. One of my ideas was bringing in organic shapes on top of these, and maybe overlap a little bit. Lightly erase that. All right, now I want to get some other organic elements in here. In the foreground, go to erase 0. I want a line wrapping around there, maybe around there, maybe it comes this way. I like this one time when we were talking with two guys I work with at school. The other teachers, Mike Sheehan and Frank Guthrie, and we sort of realized, like, as in our program, we don't really want your money because we get paid by the state. We want your talent. Like, that's sort of a good logo for us, is getting that opportunity to get you in and create talent, which changes the playing field a little bit, because then you're not as interested in all that other stuff, Got to meet quotas and demands. I feel bad for some of those private art schools. You know, you got to pay the bills. You got to get students in. But man, it's really expensive. Perhaps maybe too expensive. And don't even get me started about students that get, if you go to a college, a four-year school, and you get out of that school and you still can't digitally paint, you didn't learn perspective correctly, you don't know a lot about draftsmanship or design, there's a problem. That's the other thing I noticed here in California is, kids getting out of programs and they work really, really hard at these schools and they get out like they just don't know anything. Like that school should be held responsible, and so should its teachers and its fine art. I mean, some of the stuff that's happening over at Cal State University Fullerton is just absolutely horrible. What this lady that's doing, this lady who heads up the program there, the fine art, head of fine art, and I know this from other students, is they're on purposely not offering, she's so pro fine art, she won't offer any classes. 74% of the students coming into that program want to get a job in art. So they're studying entertainment arts, which is this, not entertainment arts, but like illustration and other related categories. So she does everything in her power to crush the illustration classes, to not offer secondary classes for students, and then forces students to have to take like glass blowing and ceramics when your major is like digital painting, animation, or design or something different. I mean, I don't know, that to me, that's just like absolutely horrible. And that's actually happening, which really, really bothers me, that someone is out there doing something like that. It's true. Right now, I want to come in here. I want to try to get a tree in there. Those students who go to Cal State Fullerton should lawyer up and get a lawyer. I have had students that have been there for excess of, they transferred as a 2-year transfer student, meaning you only take 2 years to get in as juniors, and they've been there for 4.5 years because they're still waiting to get a class to graduate. And that's what this lady does. She on purposely, there'll be 150 students waiting to take one class, and she will limit it to only 22 students in that class. And then she on purposely won't offer another session. Shame on you, Jade Jewett, whatever your name is over there, for doing that. You're taking advantage of students and their education and restricting away their possibility of growth. And that's just an absolutely greedy thing to say, just because you don't to do. And not to say, excuse me, your actions are louder than words, and the way you've treated your fellow transfer students there. So from this day forward, I mean, they lost Cliff Cramp. And I know other instructors there that have been treating like crap. And I just don't understand what that school has turned into and what they're doing anymore. It's really just become just a negative ball of, it's sad. It's really sad. It shouldn't need to be like that. All right, that's my rant, but it's true. Nothing worse than something that's actually happening. I was there and I witnessed it firsthand. I was there as a graduate student. Jade pulled one of our classes. We had an illustration class that was going to take place in a printing lab. I'm not kidding you. It was like I went into this room and it was all printing materials, and Jade moved it for some reason. And I went in there. I went right up to the art office. I'm like, dude, I'm a graduate student here. I'm paying $2,000 for 2 classes a semester. That's $1,000+ plus tax and all the other stupid parking stuff. And I'm not going to take a class and be put inside a room with printing presses, and not a room that should have Cintiqs, a place to sit, this should be air conditioned and so on. It's absolutely ridiculous what she's doing. All right, that's thumbnail number 1. So we'll go from here, and I'm going to dive into another one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause real quick, And then I'm going to put some tone into this just to separate some of the values in there. Now, I did have one idea. I'm looking at this now, and this is the great thing about doing a thumbnail, right? You put 20 minutes of time into something, and then you might come back and you notice something you could adjust or fix on it. So I'm looking at this, and what I've already noticed is if I come over here, if I take my lock off, put another layer up on the top, and I'm going to switch, I'm going to fill this with white on the new layer, paste in my castle that's back there, was there. And I felt it might be a little bit large now in the composition. So if I scale it down a little bit like that, see what that does immediately is it still fits in there pretty nicely. Let me get this up on the hill. Okay. Then I'm going to take this. I always have a tendency to sort of have to go back in and tweak an environment or a thumbnail, you know, to get it to work a little bit easier. You're making changes. Oops. Helps if I'm not on white anymore. And then let's do a little bit of cheat sheet here. I just took something, copy, pasted it over, see what it looks like if it's a little bit larger. If that emphasizes a little bit more the silhouette, and it does, it makes the structure a little bit more pronounced. And paste that right here. Transform, flip it the other way, squash out a little bit, raise it. That actually might be better over here on the back side. Like another castle wall, like there. That's sort of cool. That sort of fits in. I like that. Like makes it more menacing castle, like a what do you call it? A pitchfork type of feel, or a trident, you know. Oh, a little large there. There. So that was making it a little bit smaller. It sort of helped the scale a little bit. So I like that quite a bit. Let me just take these layers that I have here. There was the old. I just like that. This is great to do in a thumbnail phase, right? You should always question your designs. And as you get better, you should be able to look at fixing your work and how do you achieve it. So let me show you the difference. There was the old one. You see the difference? Nothing wrong with the old one. It still works. But that was my first pass at it. By making it smaller and condensing it, what that does, I have a term I use for that. I sort of made called minimizing, meaning you draw something larger, it looks cool, but then when you scale it down, it makes the line smaller, makes the imagery smaller, and the drawing just tends to work a little bit better when it's smaller. So you're adjusting the scale. Sometimes your brain can only output some information at a certain height. So in distance. So by doing that, look at the difference in the scale. I like that because now it's a much grander, it's a little bit smaller, it fits more into that element of like an 80-20 composition. I like that quite well. And I had a couple of areas over here. I could have put some other stones and stuff on. And let me do that as I finish up here. So let me come back here to this layer. What these stones I had in the front here, I wanted to put a couple of them, overlapping a little bit. Hold on, Phil did a mistake here. I'm going to finish real quick. I'm going to fill this white. I'm going to be able to come back here. Let me see if this will work. Select and color range. Let's touch that pure white. Hit OK. And if I hit delete, select, I should have got up written all of, oh, except for that page I did there. So I'm going to fix that too. So that was my new sketch. Let's do the same thing, go to select, and we'll go to color range. We're going to touch the pure white, hit OK. Photoshop should select only that area. Hit delete on that layer, deselect. There I still have my line drawing, but what's cool is now I have the white background separate, which is what I wanted. Okay, so oops, let me hit save real quick. I've noticed whenever I have that jump in Photoshop, it's because the memory is getting short for the video recorder and it's tending to mess with it a little bit. Okay, so I have the new castle. There's, oh, I don't know how I got that. Oh, I know what I did. I accidentally, it's all right. I accidentally selected part of that and deleted it. The other castle, which was much larger, if you notice the difference. Anyway, so I don't really need that anymore. I made my adjustments that fit my composition a little bit better. There, and I have these two layers. So now I'm going to merge those together into one. There we go, and that's my line sketch. So I'm going to label that line 1. And let me pause the recorder. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be right back, and then we will continue. And I'll do a couple more thumbnails for you guys. All right, so I'm back, and sorry, just take a quick little break. One of the things I did really quick is I didn't do it when I was thinking about it. The background around the castle is empty, so it shouldn't be. And I have some different ideas on things I could do. One of the things I wanted to do first is I had this idea of a large cloud sort of here, maybe overlapping a little bit like this, coming through here. And good friend of mine, this is senior, he was an art director. Now he's senior art director, which is cool. Paid in all those dues. Calls it the Phil cloud, because what I do, being, well, obviously, because my name is Philip, but I like to do this like curving cloud that you can see underneath a little bit like this. That's following some form of perspective. Remember, so many artists are used to drawing on the ground plane. We forget that there is a sky plane, and that sky plane is a grid above our horizon line. And there are lots of things that exist on that grid. You could see plants and trees. You could see birds. You have all these other elements that deal with draftsmanship and drawing that can be represented up on the back here. And it could actually, you can get a lot of movement with, if you look at clouds and how they overlap, and you got mountains and trees, branches, all those other elements. These are like really important things to consider in a sketch. You know, what about incorporating a forest line now here? If I have a cloud there, this is my idea. Another cloud in the back, like this, smaller. I got hard edges on there. That's not right. Don't do hard edge clouds. No such thing. Okay. And then what I thought of doing was down here, I want to put a tree line around part of this in the back here. So when we get back here, there's one last wall structure in the back. This for our castle. And then there's tree line. Forest line. If you don't, a good example of how to draw forests is go look at any photo of the main park in Central Park in New York, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You have buildings, and you have tons of trees and tree lines all around those buildings. And you can see what the silhouette read of all these lines and shapes are, how they work together to give you that feel of there being a dedicated tree line behind objects. That's important. I think to have some of that in. And then what I wanted to do is I wanted to see if I could get taller ones coming up like this with another cloud shape behind them. I don't know if that'll fit in this piece, let's say. Some of those, I'm not liking some of my little tree silhouettes back there. They're looking a little similar. That's all right. And what I'll do is back behind here, a little bit of another cloud behind there. So that's that spatial depth, right? That comes into your advantage of having, that's the power of overlap, learning perspective correctly. If you're a newbie out there on YouTube and you're watching some of my demos here, I'm pretty sure it's going to go through, but I'll announce it officially. But I'm going to be teaching a summer class on basic drawing for entertainment arts. I have all kinds of really detailed avenues of drawing in there. And it's a great way just to work on mileage. Hold on a minute. I'm hitting brush and Photoshop isn't wanting to work. Hold on, I'm having a hiccup here. That's weird. Photoshop's acting up a little bit. Okay, so now I want to bring another large hillside, if I can, into this composition. And I wanted to do that, so now I can also put indication of forest line, other foresty looking trees and shapes. In the back there. And then I might throw, this is a cool thing you could do for overlap. And I could throw a cloud. Let's try it real quick. Let me show you. I cut into this right here. I have a cloud now overlapping that shape. That's depth. That's power of overlap, right? And then I can come back here behind and I have another cloud in the back. It's behind the structure. That's what talking about when we talk about the use of that spatial plane. There's a spatial plane that exists, and we need to think about that because that could create a lot of depth inside a piece. And then I already went ahead when I took my break just to save time. What I did is I threw some tone down here and I put a little bit of light tone there. So there's an idea for thumbnail number 1 for elevated castle structures surrounded by organics. My idea was some type of a road or forest that led in there. I'm pretty happy with it for thumbnail. It's okay. The more I do, the better I'll get warmed up. Okay, so let's do that. We're gonna come over here and I'm gonna start another one. Just a second. I'm gonna go ahead and get ready for it. I'll be right back. Uh-oh. Let me try to pause the recording. 1 second, guys. All right, let's start that second thumbnail now. Now, in this particular example with this subject matter, it might be a little bit easier for us to consider going with a vertical composition. Obviously, lots of benefits to the vertical composition, especially if we're going to be looking at particular height relationships of our castle to the environment that might be in. So I'm going to go for something about there for right now. Of course, I got that wonderful line down the middle. Thank you, Photoshop. Okay, so with that said and done, what's really great about this is this, with a vertical composition, if our horizon line's down here, we have basically this much more height that you can get out of your piece, which is quite fantastic because that'll make a huge difference when you're drawing and sketching. Another benefit to vertical composition, as you'll notice here, things got squashed in there a little bit, they get a little tight. You have a limitation on what you can put in here. We can definitely raise things in levels. And what I mean by that is this. Let me show you for an example. Imagine if I have something here that's like in the foreground, let's say. I'm going to go, I'm stuck. I have different ideas for composition. I had something more square based in the middle, offset a little bit. But there's a couple options. So anyway, let's say here our horizon line's about there. Okay. If our horizon line's there, what that means, let me do that again. I can start to try to manipulate some ground planes, rocks, and everything to my advantage. See where it comes in. It might guide me. So if I put a large ground plane mass here, and then I think about there being smaller masses of rocks, another element. Around here. Now, I want to erase part of that line. Now I could start thinking of something going up. So my idea here was large rocks, mountains, lots of them. Get some ideas for some reference. Start off with a base idea for 2-point, see where it takes me and how I can develop more. I'm already having some things in here I don't like, but let me just try to focus and draw a little bit. You never know where the sketch is going to take you, right? I think it's easy to get frustrated with something, but then you didn't put enough time into it to see if it could have taken you somewhere else. that's the benefit of getting into something and working a little bit more. I'm a little iffy on that design, but I can still add to it. I tend to draw naturally oversized. Then I want to come back. That's a pretty large structure there. So what I will do is, and I already know it's oversized, so it's in my best interest to now come in here and shrink it down a little bit. There we go. All right. Check layers here. There we go. That's all on the line. And now it gets a little bit smaller for what I want. It gives me another idea or two to have in there. Okay. So let me think. I'm trying to incorporate. I have this idea. I don't know if it's going to work. If I get back here like this, there's no pathway, or I really haven't defined a front entrance for pathway. And I could do that just by sort of doing something like this, where put a main arch, doors of what I call interest. And maybe that pathway goes in between all these rocks. Here, at least you can see a little bit of the pathway that lines up to part of the castle. I'm going to try to get some other rocks on the side of it. Those are coming out really rich. I have something, and then I might be able to round something into here. Because then my idea was, is when I get to here, there could be rocks, and then there could be a cliff, let's say. Maybe this cliff comes down a little bit, like so, and then this is like foreground here with lots of vegetation and stuff all over it. But then I need to get something in the immediate foreground. So to do that, I'm going to come over here and put a large swooping shape that brings me back a little bit. Sorry, that's my dog walking in the back there. He's coming in the room, wondering why I sit here at the computer for hours. Like, why you just sit there? He's not eating. He doesn't have food. So he doesn't know if he should be in here right now. I'm going to try to bring some silhouette read visual identifiers of some organic in the midground there. Excuse me, back in the midground, just a little bit. I might have to stop because I'm getting a weird lag again on the recorder, which is the memory being eaten up. And the only way to fix that is to stop recording, and then I'll come back and do another demo, another part to that. See, I'm drawing lines, nothing's coming out. That's Photoshop not liking to have to share memory with another software. It's all right. This is my second thumbnail. There's a couple issues with it that I don't like, but it's also, you know, the more of these you do, the better you get, right? I know I'm in the back of my mind. I can hear Jonathan right now. He says, let's put a waterfall back there behind that building. So waterfall it is. There's a waterfall there. Maybe water runs down here and also drops somewhere else. The water zigzagging around. There's another little waterfall there. It's hard to see. Waterfalls will always be hard to see in a linear composition because there's only line there. You need that variation of tone going to a digital paint. It's going to help you dramatically figure out how that's working, you know? Right, there's thumbnail 2. Let me pause real quick and then I'm going to tone it. If it'll do it. And it won't pause. Give me 1 second. All right, so I just came back in and I threw a little bit of tone variant on there just to show you the difference. The tone really helps to separate out the layers and actually gives a little bit of friendliness of the elevated planes. So now you can see a little bit of the waterfall here, waterfall in the back. Oh, I forgot to throw some. Let me do that back there in the back. Oops, I changed brushes. So let me come back in here and I wanted to put a little bit of tone in the back around the mountains there. So maybe you can see if that was another waterfall. Was the idea. Another one like back behind it type of thing, like this. Okay, maybe stroke or 2 of tone on some of the buildings, very light. That's it. I think that's good enough for a rough thumb to give us a good direction to go in terms of vertical composition. I like the separation here of foreground, midground, to background. I think it reads well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this, get this rendered, and then do a couple more, and then I'll put them up again. So remember, for homework in class, you're just supposed to be thumbnailing out ideas. We're not doing finished pieces yet. We're not doing a rough drawing, but you can take your thumbnail, whether it be this or whether it be this, and you could go that extra step and develop it a little bit further. By the way, you can see one of the problems Phil had is I lost when I deleted that white around the line. It gave me this weird negative pattern in part of this. So that's all right. Note to self, draw on separate layer. Don't draw on the back layer. You'll get a nice crisp sketch like that or like this. All right. We'll be back in just a little bit. Thanks, guys.